everybody. My name is Kimberly LeBlanc. I am the Film Commissioner and Music Program Manager for the City of San Antonio's Department of Arts and Culture and San Antonio Film Commission. That's a mouthful. You might also know us from social media as TVSA. We are the same. Thank you so much to our wonderful partners here at Texas Public Radio for having us for this Artist Forum focused on the logistics of filmmaking. And thank you all for showing up. We really appreciate it. For anyone who isn't familiar with our office, I just want to say a few words. We're a resource agency, again, housed within the city of San Antonio, and our goal is to market San Antonio and the greater area as a competitive filming destination, but never at the expense of supporting our local community. So thank you, local community, for showing up. We're going to have a great conversation here with our panelists, so I'm going to introduce you to in just a moment. As Kristen mentioned, we are happy to take questions throughout the event, try to keep them as relevant to the topic that we're talking about, and then we will have a period for Q&A towards the end as well, for any less relevant questions maybe to the conversation, but all questions are relevant, all questions are welcome. This is an opportunity for us to, connect, hopefully collaborate with the people who you meet here tonight or reconnect with, and also just learn from each other and our experiences in the industry. So I want to have as much time as possible for our conversation, so I'm going to get started introducing our incredible panelists. If you could give them a round of applause after I read just a little bit of their bios too, I will appreciate that very much. First, we have Roseann Garcia with us. She is a producer and the TVSA production supervisor for the City of San Antonio's Communication and Engagements Division. I am so proud to have her as a colleague and an occasional collaborator. She has more than 10 years with the City of San Antonio in the Communications Department, where she is working in the capacity of TVSA's production supervisor, as I mentioned. When Roseann is not on the clock as a public servant for the city creating films, she is a San Antonio Spur, serving as an AV technician for home games for the Spurs organization. She's also a volunteer with the San Antonio Jets, a blind baseball team who is ranked second in the nation. Her work within the city exemplifies the love she has for her city, featuring stories and people from different communities, but also highlighting her attention to information accessibility for all. Her work has included bilingual speakers and has included audio description for the visually impaired. Let's give Roseann a big round of applause. And her incredible film is going to be screening after this panel discussion, so I hope you'll all stick around for it. Next, we have Chantel Gallegos, Nasits. Chantel has 20 plus years in the television and film industry, 11 as a producer. She has never found a job on a film or commercial set she couldn't do. Her drive to ensure that the client and creative visions are respected on every project makes her an incredible asset to the GDC team, where she is an agency producer. Chantel has worked on indie and feature films, commercial sets, music videos, documentaries, branded content projects. She has worked in 13 states with clients from 3 different continents, as well as major players in film and music, including Robert Rodriguez, Spike Lee, Willie Nelson. Chantel has worked on 3 Emmy Award-winning television productions. She has won Addy Awards and was given a Silver Award from the Parenting Publications of America. Chantel says that her type A creative brain is satisfied through her work as a producer, and knowing her, I would agree. Let's give her a round of applause. And next we have Daniel Saldivar, founder and creative director of San Antonio-based White Rhino VFX and Hush Beauty VFX. Daniel is a local filmmaker, an entrepreneur, and a VFX artist who is a self-taught creative with multiple business ventures in the production and visual effects businesses from San Antonio, Texas. With over 20 years of feature film advertising and music industry experience, many of Daniel's projects have had the luxury of being distributed worldwide by large entertainment companies such as Netflix, Apple Films, Sony Pictures, and Lionsgate Films. With a passion for education, Daniel spends time speaking to students all over the nation about the art of filmmaking and brand building. Let's give it up for Daniel. And so out in the lobby, when you were mixing and mingling, you might have seen some sample reels of work that's been done by Daniel and his team at White Rhino, some of the work that Chantel has worked on, some of the incredible work that Roseann has done as well, and hopefully our Film San Antonio locations reel as well. So with that said, I was so excited when the Texas Public Radio team approached us about this panel. We could really have, I think, a forum that lasts for about 2 months, going over all the logistics of filmmaking. So organizing it was a particularly fun challenge with this set of all-star panelists. But before we get into the logistics of filmmaking, I think it's important, because there are no two paths into the industry that are alike, just sharing a brief overview of your story, and starting with a baseline on what you do professionally is so helpful. And so, Roseann, I'd love to start with you, and just tell us a little bit about your role at TVSA as production supervisor and the work that you've done as a freelance producer. What do you do, and how did you get there?
Thanks. So TVSA is a division in the City of San Antonio's Communications and Engagement Office. And we do kind of 3 things. Our first one, of course, is live production. So part of being in the city is being transparent, and that's with the live production meetings. So our biggest ones, of course, are the A session and B sessions, where you'll see council. And then the second part is education. So we are partnered with SAC, and that's our education channel. And then we do our field work, which is the programming that you can find on YouTube or in our social pages. That's stuff that's been produced by TVSA, which is our team. And I'm in charge of the field production specifically. And so they're the ones where we kind of partner with different departments. If they have an idea, we're like, great, this is what we can do in a video form or in a social media form content. So we have always different collaborators, and that can be any department, from ACS, from housing and neighborhood, city manager's office. Our goal is just to get that information out there. And how do we get that information out there? Of course, the best way is visually, right? A lot of people like to watch stuff on YouTube, and so we started getting bigger on YouTube channel, and then now social media has become the biggest thing where you can scroll and find a video, and so now we're kind of upping our social media. Hopefully everybody follows COSA.gov. That's where you can find the latest information, but also any kind of videos that we've produced in that. The City of San Antonio also has studios, which anybody in the community during our office hours, which is 8 to 5, can be their own producers, and you can do a show in that studio. If you're not aware of that, a lot of people aren't.
I'm so glad you're sharing this information. It's one of the best kept secrets.
Yeah, it really is, and it's actually located across the street from here at TPR. The only thing a lot of people don't know about it is because it is that you do have to work around our schedule, which is that 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, unfortunately. There are some opportunities to get, maybe if you are partnered with somebody else or with a big agency company, you can kind of book the studio, but we kind of have the final say if it is available or not. But yeah, if you are a content creator or you want to start a YouTube channel or any sort of form, our studio is available. It's free. It does take a while to get in, but once you're in, you're doing a show that's 30 minutes. And we give you that content. And then for freelance work, really I read a script. Because I do have a full-time job, I kind of am picky with what I end up working with. But if you have a great script, I'm willing to read it, give you notes even, and usually we'll go from there.
Super generous. And then Roseann, how did you get started, or just kind of briefly, like how did you end up doing what you are doing right now? Because I think it's important. To just
yeah. Well, I've always been a creative person. I loved writing. I even loved drawing. So I knew I was always going to be on the creative side. I just didn't know what that looked like in this kind of career level, right? I don't think anybody's ever aware that you can just become a director or a producer or do that without being in Hollywood. It's not all about just being in Hollywood. So when I was in high school, I went to Brackenridge High School, and I got to be in the media program there, and that's where I graduated from. Our teacher actually put some of our films into South by Southwest, and mine got in it. So that's when I was like, all right, this is actually something I can do. Then I got into UT Austin, and from there, I started producing my own content, getting to know everybody, networking with your peers in the studio and all that. And then, so after graduation, I didn't know what was going to happen. I came back to San Antonio, and then I saw an opening as a director at the city of San Antonio, part-time. I didn't know what that was, but I took a chance, got in, and then it turned into this, where we started creating content, and now it's been like that ever since.
I'm so glad you applied for a job that you weren't 100% sure what it was.
But like back then, it was all just live production. So I hadn't done broadcasting since high school, and I told them that, but they saw my reel and they really liked the stuff I was doing, and I think we were moving into that transition of doing, original content for the city. So I think I came in at the right time.
Definitely. Chantel, I'd like to move on to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your role as an agency producer at GDC Marketing and Ideation, as well as a little bit about your background as a production manager previously? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to say I have a script, so thank you for allowing us to send them over.
Reading, so
yes,
no
and
problem.
your studio is great. So as an agency producer, essentially I'm one of the clients. So we have brands that come to us and need content created, and it's a lot of social media right now. But we also do PSAs, radio spots, and my job is mainly just production managing at that level. Only now I have 15 projects or more at a time instead of just maybe 2 to 3. So it's a lot of kind of overseeing what the production companies and the producers that we're hiring are handling. So it's really quite a change from my past life. And so that'll transition me into how I got here. Was going to Incarnate Word and interning at an advertising agency. And we did our first commercial, and it was a PSA for the Children's Shelter of San Antonio. And that's really where I found, the film bug, just going on that one set, really just kind of ignited my fire. And simultaneously, we were also hiring photographers to do some of our print work, some stills, and I fell in love with photography. So I thought, I'm not going to do advertising anymore. I'm going to be a photographer. So I started apprenticing with different, commercial photographers in town. Actually, any photographer that at that time would let me carry their bag, change their film, and then, slowly worked my way up to, becoming a photographer myself. So cut to a year and a half later, I'm now doing stills on a photonovela, and it's the biggest set I've ever been on in my life, and we're filming out at Stinson Airfield. We have a huge crew. And as soon as I stepped on that set, I said to myself, this is where I want to be. And so my route to production was with photography. It was kind of simultaneous, being a production assistant so I could work on sets, and then also supplementing my income and learning the craft of photography. So that, kind of just led me on a career of being a freelance production assistant and a freelance, crew member, every single department. Hair, makeup, wardrobe. I've assisted, everything, camera, and just really worked my way up to be a production coordinator and then a line producer, production manager. So after all of those years of experience, COVID made a huge change in my life because everything really stopped as far as traditional filmmaking is concerned. When I say traditional, I really use that term kind of loosely because it's kind of like what happened before COVID, how we handled production, and then during COVID, and now the aftermath of COVID. So during COVID, there was a lot of live streams and pre-recording. So we really changed, how we were operating, how many people could be in the crew, all of the testing, COVID, mandates, and, we really just kind of scaled down and took a step back, and content creation changed, right? So as soon as we were coming out of COVID and getting back to our lives and starting to, make content again, I got a call from this advertising agency that I had been a vendor. I had produced for them. I had done photography. I had done production for them. And they said, we need an agency producer. We haven't had one in 20 years. And we have all of this content that needs to be created. would you like to step out of your, honestly, I had my own business, my own production company. It was just me. But, are you willing to step away from that to come work for us? And I thought, absolutely. I think, now's the time in my career that, I'm ready to kind of take a step back and let everybody, new crews, new filmmakers come in and kind of fill that gap. So
it's an incredible overview of somebody who has worn every hat on set and then some. So I think it's just so important to kind of illustrate like what people's pathways through the industry look like. Daniel, I want to get to you too, so that you can just tell us a little bit about what you do as founder and creative director of White Rhino VFX and Hush Beauty VFX, and also share a little bit about how you got to where you are as well.
Testing. Thank you for that. Hello, everybody. Good to see everybody today. Kim, thanks so much for the invite today. Thank you, Film San Antonio, Texas Public Radio. Thank you for the opportunity today. And again, thanks everybody for being here. We're really excited. So like Kim said, my name is Daniel. Hi, everybody. I'm Daniel. I'm a recovering filmmaker. I started a company called White Rhino VFX in 2012, and we're based here in San Antonio, but we serve clients globally. So think Los Angeles, Atlanta, New York, Paris, London, and as far away as New Zealand, which is great. And we primarily work in visual effects and animation. So we work in feature films, high-end commercials, music videos, brands like Converse, Peloton, Nissan, Lululemon, list goes on, Fortnite, all the gamers in the house, Fortnite game. And then musical talent such as Chris Brown, Nick Jonas, Santana, Little Uzi Vert. The names go on and on and on. So the question is, how did we get here? And we have a second company called Hush, and Hush is beauty and retouching. So I want you to think Photoshop for video. So we make people look really, really beautiful. We cater to clients who care about their on-screen image and persona. And so we do everything from skin softening, wrinkle removal, makeup touch-ups, and digital nip and tuck, so we give them the right shapes that they want to be. So at the end of the day, how did this all start? Are there any student filmmakers in the house tonight? Can you just raise your hands? I can see one or two hands. Beautiful. Back here. Perfect. I started off as a film student here in San Antonio. And so I was really trying to figure out what's next for me. And so I was actually talking to military recruiters and different things. And then I got the letter that I got accepted into college. And so I went and was there for a couple years. And after a few years, I decided, I think it's time to go out on my own and start something. So we started a company. My girlfriend, now wife, was like, I think you should do it. I think you should really try to make this work. And so we did. And so we looked at the landscape, and I want to say, like, we hit the industry at the right time where Dropbox was a thing, where After Effects was now, you could get it on subscription. You didn't need to spend $1,000. So 2012, 2011, 2013, the whole industry is now changing. The DSLR comes out, changes everything. Everybody's a filmmaker now, and everybody needs some footage taken care of. So a little tip and trick, find a need and fill it. And here we are today, continuing to find a need and fill it. So I'll pass it back.
Excellent note of wisdom to transition this conversation on. So as we kind of transition now, because I think it's so important for everyone to kind of just know our panelists, a baseline of what you do, the roles that you have currently, previously, but then also how you got there. Taking a step back, we can't do film school in like less than an hour. It's not happening. Nobody needs that. But what we do want to do is just kind of talk about the logistics of filmmaking and demystify it in the three major kind of phases that we'll be focusing on tonight. You know, every single project, doesn't really matter the project type, whether it's a commercial, TV series, feature film, music video, has so many moving pieces, so many logistical considerations, and it's absolute magic that anything ever gets made. It's a miracle, and that's the true movie magic. When people say movie magic, that's the magic, actually. We'd like to demystify that magic a little bit, I think. And so, you know, here you have this art form that's highly collaborative with all these moving pieces. No two projects are alike. No two people's career paths are the same. And yet, when we look at it, when we take a step back, there are definitive stages that we can zero in on in best practices and logistics that make it possible time and time again, no matter what that project is, to see a project through from script to screen. And so we're going to start with pre-production. The three kind of stages we'll focus on are pre-production, production, and post-production. You'll have to come back for the marketing masterclass later. But the script is finalized, your project has funding, the planning process is off to the races. And so, Roseann, can you get us started by just saying more about post-production? How do you approach this? Or I'm sorry, pre-production. How do you approach the pre-production planning stage, and what are the logistics that you're most focused on squaring away during pre-production?
I hope I don't ruin the film for you guys, because I'm going to talk about mostly this project that we just did. So hopefully that doesn't ruin it. We were always told, when you're filmmakers, every movie you watch now is kind of ruined, because you're always just thinking about God, what was that process that they had to have done? Or oh, that's where that cut was, or this is where that was. So it kind of ruins it a lot for us filmmakers, but I still enjoy watching movies and I enjoy watching shows. But yeah, so for specifically this film, it was actually first a short story that my friend had written from college. And when she finally wrote this script and approached me with it, I was like, yes, I want to do this. Let's look at the script again. So we finalized the script. And if you look outside, I don't know if they had them out there, but I do have binders that kind of show that process and what the script breakdowns are for us, at least the way I do it. So script breakdown is probably the first thing I always and everyone should do. And that's knowing how many scenes there's going to be, how many locations there are, props, if any. And so specifically for this film, the biggest thing was our locations, mainly just because everything was visual, and specifically this home that we kind of have to tear down with the character. And so we were like, okay, we want to find this specific house, but also we have to destroy it. So who's going to let us destroy a house, right? I would imagine nobody would want us to destroy their home.
It's
unless you're another
list.
filmmaker who's do it, right? Which we have a VFX, and I wonder if you can point it out in our film. But anyway, so that was our biggest one. So then at that point, we knew we had to find a studio. And so what studio was going to be within our budget. So that's another key component, is a budget, right? How much are you willing to spend to make this film? A lot of people never really know what that looks like until you start thinking about hiring crew, and are you going to be paying this crew as well? It's a lot, because everybody knows it's true, right? Everybody wants to get paid, and you shouldn't have to work for free. And so I would imagine that, yes, I'm going to want to pay the people who's going to help me create this thing, right? And so the location was probably our biggest component that we had as far as pricing went, because then we have to build an actual set. How much of that set are we going to be showing? And then it was how many days can we book the studio to film everything before and then everything after? And then of course you had to make sure in production, hey, we got to make sure we got everything this day shot, because then it's destroyed and we can't go back ever. But our studio, so once we found our studio space, we were really excited because we didn't even know it kind of existed. It was in Tyler, Texas. They were really fortunate, and because they were so kind of new, they let us use the space, and all they asked for was promoting our studio, what can you do? And so we did a little time lapse of the studio built. We had planned that out ahead of time, we're going to do a time lapse, we're going to record it, and we're going to make sure they see it and that we tag the studio. And so that.
Thank you for just bringing that up. I think sometimes filmmakers will say, oh, I don't have a locations budget, or I don't have a budget for this. And there's always a way to think kind of creatively and provide value to the people that you're partnering with. So thanks.
Yeah, especially if they're so new. And then a lot of people got to read our script, even our crew, when we were doing the hiring process. If you find that people love your script, they will do anything to help you make this work, because at the end it's going to help them, right? And they're real as well. So if you show your script early and kind of let them know your vision, our director had a very beautiful lookbook that I'm pretty sure I pasted it with you guys. Y'all can take a look at that to know what a lookbook would look like and what kind of information it has. But that kind of sells your film before it's even made. So always make sure you do that on your films. And so another part of pre-production was, the hiring process, right? Where do we find these people? How do we find them? There's a lot, in your network alone, I'm sure you can find people. That's why when you're in school, make sure you work with a lot of different teams. If you want to do, even if you don't want to do that kind of work, make sure you know who the hair and makeup person is, because you never know. You might have to hire them and work with them the next time. So I always say when you're a PA, if you go into a set, kind of introduce yourself to everyone and be a helping hand all the time, because that really helps in your network. Another part of like pre-production for me, the biggest, then we go back to the budget.
It always goes back to the budget, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. Like I said, some of your crew members are willing to work at a special price, specifically just for you. Please be open to that. And then as far as getting money, like there's tons of ways. The lookbook, you can actually go to like agencies and ask like, hey, or production companies and be like, I have this project, if you're willing to work with me, this is my plan, blah, blah, blah. Or you can do crowdfunding, or even just kind of ask people around for money. Our biggest, the way we got our money was a big investment from a family friend. So we were pretty fortunate for that. And we tried to make everything stay within the budget. That was the biggest thing.
And I'll just jump into and add that some other resources for funding to include grants. We have a really comprehensive list of grants, but Texas-based and national organizations for filmmakers. And then we also do have individual artist grants that the Department of Arts and Culture administrates to help support San Antonio filmmakers making new work. And then an incentive program as well, which provides projects that qualify a really nice competitive rebate up to 7.5%, which can be paired with the states for up to 30% rebate. So there's a couple of different financial considerations that you've got. But really, your network is the best consideration you have, like Roseann was saying. Your available resources.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're a student filmmaker, still definitely take advantage of all the grants, because there's definitely a lot more for students than there are when you're no longer a student.
What are some other kind of, just staying on pre-production, the logistics that you're trying to square away during this phase? Some other considerations when you are crewing up, you're casting. Of course, you want people who are passionate about your project. You want people who are available. But, scheduling, like say, for example, right? It becomes such a huge part of that process of determining who your key team is going to be. Can you say a little bit more about like your process with that, Roseann, especially on this particular project, because I know it had an extended timeline?
Yeah, so independent filmmakers, usually you have to wear a lot of hats. So I was also the casting director. So we had to do all the casting calls for it and put them up wherever we could, right? And that was in forums you can do Texas Film. With San Antonio, you can send it to them and they'll probably post it,
we will.
Of course. And then just asking around, like, again, back to that network. So when we did a casting call, the director was really particular to make sure, like, the dynamic would work. So we did a lot of casting pre-production work with them, where we even brought them together and we would group different types of people together, different actors together, to make sure they even worked that way. Once we found that, we set aside some time with the boxer and the choreographers so that they can make sure like everything's looking good. And then really it was, we had to get the studio first and know when they were available for dates to then decide like, okay, this is when I think is the best dates to film. And then we kind of got our cast and crew to be like, this is what we're thinking in this vicinity. How does that look like for you guys? And yeah, it ends up working out, but just finding the one day or the weekend, for us it was the weekend that everybody could do it, and sometimes get very tedious or very specific. But like I said, for us it was first getting that studio and making sure we can use that space first, and then telling the crew like, this is where we're at. These are going to be the dates. Can you do it or not? And sometimes it didn't work. So it was like, if they couldn't do it, we had to find somebody else or another actor or a second option, of course.
Yeah, scheduling is such a Rubik's Cube. So when all the pieces align and you've got your team and you've got that key piece, like in your case, the studio lined up, what other kind of considerations are then going in, like your equipment needs, availability, other rentals? Can you speak a little bit more about some of the other logistics that you're working to line up, as all this comes together?
Yeah, we also were really lucky with our DP. He worked with a camera company before, and he had really good hookups. So we were able to book. He kind of did all the booking for like the equipment rentals, and then we signed off on it and said, yeah, this is what we can do within our budget. And then that's when we got all the stuff. That's another part of scheduling too, because companies where you are renting this equipment from probably don't have the camera that you need or that lens that you might need that day. So you're either waiting for that to be available or you just keep moving on. And for us, it's always like moving on. How are we going to change now the shot list we had particularly had for that one scene into something that is available for us? And those are just things you always have to be prepared for as producers. I always say if you're going to be a producer, make sure you can adapt, or a filmmaker, make sure you can adapt, because anything can come up. And this was just pre-production,
Right. And you're constantly pivoting during all stages, but in this planning process, it's so important to keep pivoting until you find those solutions that are going to set you and your team up for success. And so I think some other considerations too that are going into things, you've got your paperwork. You want to see a little bit about paperwork, and we won't stay on it for too long, but it's so important at this point. And then I think envisioning too, the different tools and resources that you're using in this pre-production stage. You mentioned your lookbook, but beyond that too, to start bringing all the pieces together.
Yeah, so like I said, we kind of scheduled it to where the director and the actors could have enough time for pre-production before we actually got into set, because we were kind of in that crunch time. And I will say, when you are in production, keep your crew happy, make sure they're fed, make sure you give them the right breaks every time, because if you're not doing that, then your production's not going to go well. I've always done things kind of a run and gun kind of thing on my own. And so sometimes I even have to catch myself telling people, oh, wait, we need a break, right?
Right.
Mentally, I don't need it, but I know we all do need it. And I know it's going to pay off at the end when we do take that break. So we had 6 months pre-production work, and then 3 months right before we started actually filming, where the director, because she was producing with me as well, but that was the time that I told her, hey, handle this, and I'll handle, like you said, all the paperwork. So then when you do get a set, so when we got the set, the studio, you do need insurance, okay? I know as film students, we probably don't really talk about insurance because you're, either filming at your home or you're filming at a place that might be a friend's, and so you're not thinking about the insurance. But when you do start making these kind of productions, insurance is a big thing that everybody always asks for. Even when you're just renting a place to screen your film, you need insurance.
And if you want to film on a City of San Antonio owned property that our team does the film permitting for, that's more than 250 properties across the city, which we're able to offer to filmmakers free of charge, no film permitting fee. You do have to have production insurance, and that's just a best practice and industry standard, and to make sure that if something goes sideways, everybody involved is covered, right? But yeah, this is the stage, pre-production, right? Where all these considerations are really coming to a head, and you've got paperwork out the wazoo. You've really got to nail down and take care of. So you might have noticed when you first came in, there was a table with some sample forms and documents. We put those out kind of collectively. These are samples that the panelists have provided, and then that TPR has provided for this event. Those aren't City of San Antonio documents, but they're industry kind of references for y'all to just kind of take a look at. It's so important to get things in writing before you start working on a project as a crew member. Get your deal in writing, even if it's just an email. You want to get the terms kind of spelled out. Same for your locations, making sure that you have location agreement documents that really spell out the terms of use so that everybody's on the same page, so that when you show up to film, everyone has a common and shared understanding. So you'll see that we had some like cast agreement, talent agreement, location agreement, talent release kind of forms out there just as samples for y'all. And then also like a sample invoice. It's really important as a freelancer in this industry to make sure that you're advocating for yourself when you work on projects by knowing how to invoice, if you are getting paid, hopefully. and then also knowing just some of those considerations. And so producers, in this pre-production... Yes, artwork releases, music clearances, so many different logistics that are kind of coming into play here. But we wanted to leave some sample documents out for y'all to just kind of see some of that in action or take it away with you. So I think that's a pretty good, overview of pre-production. And so it's clearly critical to plan as much as you can so that things will go as smoothly as possible before cameras roll and while cameras roll. Because the more smoothly production is going, then the more optimized everyone's time is, and you have the ability to reduce costs. So the general goal is to make production period as brief as possible because of those reasons. And you can plan as much as you want. And I think everybody on this stage is a planner, or we wouldn't be here united and logistically yours. But you have to leave room for the unanticipated too. And so, Chantel, I'd like for you to say more about production. How do you approach this stage, and what kind of logistics are you wrangling to keep the chaos of production as calm as possible?
Yes. Well, first, we don't call it chaos. So I think going into this phase, my main focus is essentially safe and legal, making sure that we have everything that we need for our shoot days or day or weeks to be safe and legal. So, this is where I break out my production checklist. It's about 9 pages long. And I'm double checking, all of my documentation, all of the paperwork that I need. Does my talent have all the releases? Does my crew have all of their paperwork? Do I have all of their paperwork back? We need signed deal memos before we get to the day. We need their W-9s on file before we get to the day. We need to make sure that they're legal to work in the state of Texas and the United States before we get to the day. Are all my location agreements signed? And do I have all the, we used to call it location checks. We don't really use checks anymore, which makes me sad because I did like the physical, handing over a check. But do I have all the money I need for my shoot day? I'm just going to say day, for the location, petty cash. Do I have, do I owe anyone anything on that day? So that's my accounting. My scheduling at this point, should be in a pretty good place because my AD, my director, we've all gone through the schedule on, what we need to, what our shot list is, et cetera. But now that we're so close to the day, maybe it's the day before, do we have inclement weather? Do we need to make changes? Does somebody have COVID? Is it talent? Do we need to replace them? So I'm making sure that I have everything that I need going into that shoot day. And so then I'm moving on to our basic needs now. So, do we have a holding area? Is it confirmed? Do we have a cover set in case we need it? Do we have, areas for catering and crafty? And just kind of thinking through my daily schedule of all of the things that we'll need. I kind of think of it as we're going to a party. I need to get everyone to the party. I need to make sure everybody gets fed. I need to make sure that the main reason why we're there at that party to celebrate our deliverable, our video, our script, that we handle that. And then that everybody leaves the party safely, and then we all get paid. So that's kind of how I think of that production.
I love that
shooting.
analogy.
Thank you. So then I move on to, getting everyone to the party. Parking, transpo, trucking. So I go down that checklist, right? So, that's all secure. Now I'm going back to, what are my red flags? What are the things on my checklist that I know are going to be challenges? Like maybe I already know that we're going to be shooting way too many pages for our schedule. And I know that going into it. So how are we going to fix that now? what do we need to start cutting, basically at that point? Otherwise, he's going to have a hard time in post with us and not be happy. So I'm working through all of those kind of known challenges, because when I get to that day, there's going to be the unknown challenges, which are usually our acts of God and, other things that we just can't control. And that's where we just kind of use our human instinct experience, to get us through whatever those are. And I can't tell you what those are because they're going to be different for everyone. So basically, then my last kind of final thing before I get to set, and I have kind of a different sort of responsibility. So Roseann's making a movie for herself. That's awesome. She might have investors. She might have people that loaned her money, so she wants to be successful. But in my boat, I have a client that I have to make sure that I'm delivering to them what they've paid for. So now I'm checking in with them. Okay, so far we've had a pre-production meeting with you. We've gone over all of the locations. We've gone over all the talent. We've gone over all the props. We've gone over all the wardrobe. You know exactly what the talent's going to be doing. Do you have any questions? And just making sure that they're comfortable with the process so far. And then making sure that their basic needs are met. So my crew knows where to go. My talent knows where to go. I need to make sure that my client knows where to go. And they're number one. They're like the studio executives, right? They're the investors. So where are they going to park? Where's their table going to be for craft service? Where's their lunch table going to be? Do we need to get them a different kind of lunch? All of those things. Making sure Video Village is set up for them because they want to see the process as it's going on, right? So while I have a whole crew over here putting, physically creating this, this deliverable, this video for them, I'm bringing them to the party. And they're seeing step by step how we're making this video for them. And so we need to over-communicate to them, just like we're communicating to our crew the needs, just like we're saying to our gaffer, swing that light, camera, change lens, client, go ahead and take a look in the monitor, pictures up before we start rolling, is everybody happy? So before I get to that day, I'm just thinking through all of the things that I need to make sure that they're happy. So that production, I call that 2 to 3 days before. And then on the day, all of that stuff is set up. You can't really set it up on that day. You kind of have to think it through beforehand.
The train has left the station and you're either on it or you're running after it, right?
Exactly.
Get on the train.
Exactly, get on the train. So, shoot day, if you've gone through your checklist of things, what's going to happen the moment you step on set. You know where everyone's supposed to be. They know where they're supposed to be. But if they don't, somebody else does. Or they can come to you. But basically, you're ready to roll and have a good time. So you've spent all that time, getting your locations. You spent all your time double checking. And so now you make a beautiful thing.
And so you have made a beautiful thing. Congratulations. You've gone through the pre-production and the production process, and now we're going to dive into post-production, where everything captured comes together. This stage includes editing, color correction, ADR, sound design, mixing, composition, music selection, and of course, VFX. Post-production is often described as the final stage of production, but don't think for a minute that post-production starts after principal photography has wrapped. Daniel, can you say more about post-production in VFX and how you work with projects? What's your approach and what kind of logistics are you and your team thinking of in this process of the project?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we lost our mic here. Here we go. Okay, so let's take it like 2 steps back and let's talk about VFX specifically. So as Kim said, like post-production is a huge thing, right? So like most people would think about editorial, and then we got like Alfie in the back, so we talk about sound and what does that look like, mixing and music and going on and on. And I'm specifically referencing VFX. So let's talk a little bit about VFX today. What is VFX? Well, VFX is short for visual effects, and it's a process where you take footage that is captured on camera, and then you take footage that's captured with another camera or something created in the computer, and you put it together, and you make something really, really wonderful. But the term visual effects is a whole order of magnitude of different disciplines. So you have compositors, you have roto paint artists, you have pyro simulation people that just blow stuff up. You have 3D animators, you have 3D texturing, you have environments, then you have people who specifically just do lighting and say, oh, I want to put a spotlight right here, I want to make this. And that's like Maya and 3ds Max, and today you have like Unreal Engine and things like that. A lot of people are really focused in on virtual production now. So that's generally the rabbit hole that is visual effects. What do we do logistically? The biggest thing that we do is have lots of conversations. So we talk with directors and we talk with producers and we say, okay, well, what do you want to do? And so they normally have like a script, or they'll have a lookbook, or they'll have a mood board, or they'll have references. And so we look at that and we try to analyze and have a conversation. What are you actually trying to do? So for us, we already start thinking about what the end result is going to be by having conversations at the very, very beginning. For example, I'll tell you a quick story. We did a music video with Lil Uzi. And the director gave us this whole brief. It was like 15 pages, and he wanted one shot where the camera starts at the very top and then goes through the mouth and comes out and reveals Lil Uzi performing on a stage. Well, we knew this information, but the camera crew did not. And so we're there, I'm watching the reference monitor, and the camera crew kept stopping short, right? And so I talked to the director. I was like, can I go up there and give some direction? They're sure. So I go up to Lil Uzi, and I'm like, hey, we're going to take this camera. I need you to go, I need you to open your mouth as wide as you can. Granted, he's a rapper. So he's just looking at me like, what are you talking about? The dancers are around. Everyone's looking around. And the director's like, yeah, do it. You got to tell him. So I'm like, okay, so the camera's going to come in. It's going to do this particular thing. And so 3, 2, 1, action. Everybody goes. I tap the camera crew. All right, and open your mouth, like a dentist. And we go right through, and it's a perfect shot. Well, we end up producing the shot. It looks great. But the thing I was going to say is, unless you knew what the end result was going to be, the director would be very unhappy because we didn't get the elements, right? And then you get the term fix it in post, which we can talk about later, which is a great term. We have posters all over our studio for that. So logistically, like, we have a great team, right? We have like Olivia, Brandy, Jocelyn, Jessa. And it starts with a conversation. And so we start looking at what does a script entail? What does a brief look like? And we start looking at it. Last year, we got to work on a television show. So we got 8 episodes, and there we are with highlighters and markers, and we're writing everything out. And Brandy's there with a calendar saying, I think we're going to shoot here, and I think this is what's going to happen here. And I got to go to Atlanta for 6 weeks, so I'm supervising on set, and the team is back here working on shots. And so they're saying, well, we want to do this magical power, we want to do this type of effect. So we're shooting on Monday, upload overnight. Tuesday morning, the team starts working on shots and bringing it back. So they're sending footage back. So Tuesday morning, I'm showing the director, well, here's what this effect might look like. But again, this goes back to, you have to look at the script, you have to have a point of reference. So logistically, there's a lot of that. Besides that, there's visual effects itself, depending on how big the production is, can be bigger than the production crew. Right? So if you ever stay and watch any of the Marvel credits or anything like that, there's hundreds and hundreds of people, right? And so for us, our coordinator, Brandy, will start reaching out to some of our freelancers on the team or remote freelancers. Hey, we need 5 people. It's going to be 3 months. It's going to be 2 weeks. It's going to be emergency day, whatever the case. And so they start building out crew lists for what we need. And we all know, like, hey, it's going to be delivered on this date. There's a producer, we need it by this, or whatever the case. So those are a lot of the logistics. So I would say, like, the biggest thing to anybody here for logistics and post, and again, I know we're just talking about visual effects today, is know what you want and write it out as clear as possible, right? So that idea of going on Google, finding images, going on Behance, going on Giphy, finding things so that when you are prepared for post, you already know exactly what you want it to be. So for us, again, we put out a lot of fires in pre-production. So let me pass it on back to you.
Well, and I think, too, you do so much in the line of client relationships, right? Managing expectations, like from the get-go, that work that you do from the beginning really helps you and your team down the road. So I love that it all ties together. So with a solid understanding of your roles, your backgrounds, and then just touching base on some of the logistical considerations of each stage of production, I want to transition into some case study kind of questions or examples, and then also remind everyone in the audience to feel free to ask their questions too, especially as we continue to talk. Roseann, I'd love for you to say a little bit more about some of the logistical challenges that you had to overcome when you were making your short film. I think you touched on some of them, but it's interesting how challenges when you're in the heart of production are so specific to your project, but then also universal. So I don't know if you'd like to highlight anything.
I will say I forgot to mention, usually when you are crewing up, you do have the one head person of that specific department. So your production designer is kind of solely all involved with the artistic look of everything as well on set. And then of course your DP is going to let the gaffer and everybody on that field know what he needs kind of done to keep it moving. So as an AD, you're not shouting at everybody to keep, moving. The head people know what's next and what they need to do. As far as problems that kind of arise, so when we were doing the location scouts, we found a ring for our set that we really wanted to use, which was a wrestling ring, and they were free. We just could only use it within the 4 hours time frame. And those are our main kind of scenes. It's those boxing scenes. And that's why we kind of we knew we had to do the choreography and kind of learned it with the movements with DP beforehand, because we knew we only had a 4-hour window. So we were in it, we shot everything, and then we had to scram out.
It's really ambitious and impressive, flash mob style filming.
It really was. And we actually had 2 locations that way, and that's when we knew we were going to pair those 2 days together, because it was 4 hours here and then the rest of our 4-hour day at this other spot. And so our first location, before we went to that chaotic one, I like to say chaotic, but it kind of went smoother than I thought it would. But before that, we were actually in a boxing gym that's located in Austin. He's fairly well known. It's Lord's Gym. I don't know if anybody knows it, if anyone's a boxer here, but Lord's Gym. He was very kind enough, but also he was on a deadline, right? We had to go in early because it's his business, and we're not going to stop his business from him getting his business. So we knew that was a crunch time too. And we had one small crew on that location, and then another small crew getting ready for our next location, which was that other ring with the 4 hours. And then once it was production, there was actually something that happened that I just did not. It's never happened before, and I was really surprised it did happen, but like I said, the show must go on. You had to keep moving, and it was in that 4-hour window. One of our actors disappeared, and we weren't done with him. He just took off, and nobody could find him. We called him, we texted him. It was union. Wasn't union. It wasn't union either. And so actually our production designer was our stand-in, and then we had to kind of go back around, how can we shoot this to where we can't show that face any longer? And it was a lot of medium shots, close-up shots, but it's something we had to do because he just physically wasn't there.
It's one of the most incredible things I think about filmmaking as an art form is that it becomes an environment, where anytime a creative challenge presents itself, there's a solution. There has to be, especially when you're in production. And so thinking through that, quick thinking on your part, pivoting, finding a different way to frame the shot, right, and just kind of move forward because you had to prep, film, and wrap out of your location in 4 hours, which is super tough. I see we might have a question.
So it is personal. It's about intimacy coordination. And I have looked at the requirements, the standards and protocols for that under the SAG-AFTRA website, and I have a lot of them already. I have worked on different films here in San Antonio, amateur stuff, and I have been the woman of the more intimate scenes. And there hasn't been anyone that was there to support. It was just, it was just super low budget. So I'm interested in supporting other filmmakers who are looking for this here in town. I'm not planning on going to California to learn the skills. I have a friend who does it out of LA. But I'm wondering, is there a need yet for filmmakers having intimacy coordinators?
Yeah, for anyone who isn't familiar, an intimacy coordinator is someone who is really, it's a more emerging position on set, but it's a very essential position on set to make sure that the activities that happen in a safe way where everyone feels good with consent and, kind of safety and best practices in mind. I think there's definitely always room for an intimacy.
And who do I talk to? Like, how do I even get into it here in San Antonio?
Yeah, sure. So I would say there are a number of folks working in that space in Texas. And I think Chantel, I saw your eyebrows raised. Would you like to add?
Oh, I was actually just saying hi to a friend in the audience. But
well, you've been called out.
Yes. Well, I can actually add to that.
Yeah, please.
So, as a commercial producer, I don't actually have a need for something like that. But I do think just using your resources and, reaching out to someone in LA and maybe any of the networking opportunities here in San Antonio, or maybe just starting that yourself, because obviously there's a need for it. But I think always with that is following whatever the standard procedures are that's coming out of some of our bigger markets, like LA and New York, and making sure that even though we're mostly non-union here, is that we're kind of running things with SAG and union rules in our minds, because I think it's important they've set the precedent and we should follow it.
And if you want to see me after class, I have some recommendations on people you could connect with locally in Texas too. Great question. Chantel, I'm going to toggle over to you. You've worked on a wide range of projects over the years. And I'd love to just kind of hear your thoughts on some of the most important logistics for emerging creatives to keep in mind when working in the industry, and also know what you wish you would have known about logistics in filmmaking when you were starting out.
Gosh, I wanted to know everything. I think for logistics, it's, the laws. I think I mentioned earlier that, being safe and being legal are the most important things. And so when you start out as a PA, you're doing things and you're not really sure why. Why am I getting a W-9 from this person? Why am I making sure it's legal to park here? And so I think as a producer, my biggest concern is just making sure we're doing things the way we're supposed to be doing them. Even if we don't have big budgets for, large catering trucks, maybe we're only able to bring in Chick-fil-A, at least we know we're not breaking any laws and that everybody is safe. And so, having insurance, having, the resources that the, Film Commission provides us. I mean, there's a checklist for the things. And like, Kim mentioned before, having an insurance certificate, to have a permit. It's so important. It's the number one thing. If you're going to make a film, make a commercial, make a video, do any sort of filming, make sure that you have insurance, because, anything can happen. You can get hurt, you can hurt someone, et cetera. So I'm just really big on safety and legality.
Yeah, I would just chime in too to add that, I think sometimes we'll think, oh, I only need production insurance if I'm filming on a city property or state property or something like that. Well, look, if you're filming at your friend's house and you want to be friends, if something goes sideways and you have crew members accidentally damage their house and then you have to pay for it out of pocket, get production insurance, right? It can kind of run that buffer in different situations. And it's also just a courtesy, right? Because people's homes are their hearth. I think that's some really great consideration. I appreciate it. I see we have a question.
Yes, my name is April, and I'm a independent filmmaker as well. But I wanted to ask you, who do you use for production insurance and who do you use for the legalities? Because I'm looking for a waiver of liability.
Yeah.
I'll give one quick shout out and just say that we do have a list of Texas-based production insurance companies that have a history of working with film projects and filmmakers. So we can always provide that information to projects or anyone who's interested.
Yeah, so utilizing that list is important. I think also insurance companies now, you can call up any insurance company and ask them if they have film production insurance. It's not as uncommon as you think. Certain agents may not, carry it personally, but that they can refer you. So I would just reach out to your Allstate agent, that insures your home and car, and they can definitely put you in the right direction.
And if you do that, sometimes you're bundling too, and so you can actually get a good deal for what you need.
Bundling's important.
I'd say for like your question about legals, there are entertainment attorneys, people who specialize in this. But of course, in order to engage with them, you have to pay them for their expertise. There's a tremendous organization called Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts. It's a nonprofit. It's based here in Texas. It's serving the entire state. And they actually have a webinar tomorrow, and I have some flyers out on our table. They wanted to be here, but they couldn't. They're a very small team. About how to do your taxes as a 1099 freelance employee. I did not know you needed to set those aside when I started working in production. So they have all kinds of cool tips for your taxes and a webinar tomorrow. And then they also have several days throughout the year where they have a legal hotline where they can provide free advice to you about the legal questions that you have for your film projects. So check that out.
Hi, my name's Kevin. Just wondering, besides events like this, what do you recommend for connecting to a community, going from an independent filmmaker to someone and getting involved?
I could talk about that for 10 years, but I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts.
Oh, no. I was gonna say, I started joining a lot of like Facebook groups that kind of let you know there's a crew call that they're looking for, and start joining, try to get onto one of those. There's always crew calls going on, and there's different resources, of course, where you can find people looking for jobs, or like people looking for to hire crews. So I would just say join some groups on Facebook. Network's probably the biggest one. Like, really start talking to a lot of people, even if it's within your own network. Maybe somebody's working on a set that you didn't know was going on. And now we're getting more jobs opportunities here in San Antonio. Like, a lot of companies are starting to come and shoot here. If you see that, try to get on it. Even as a PA, I would just put my services out there.
Yeah, I would also say go ahead and add your name to the directory that the San Antonio Film Commission has already going. And then once you get on that first job, you make sure you text message and email and keep in touch with that entire crew that you've met, because they're going to be the ones that refer you to the next job. So that call sheet is so important, and those connections you make just on your very first job are going to keep you in this industry.
Yep, follow us at Film San Antonio on social media. I try to use our social media. It's me, by the way. I try to celebrate people's successes in the community, but also make sure that people are aware of different like networking opportunities, events. And then on that note, we also have an events calendar. So check that on our website, but also list stuff, please. It's free and it's a great resource. And then yes, absolutely, every single person here should be listed in our production directory. If you're not, I'll find you. I'll track you down, and I'll ask you really nicely to list, because the better our showing in our production directory is, the better we can sell everything and everyone that San Antonio has to offer as a filming destination.
Can I add a suggestion?
Yes.
When I first started, I would go to the casting calls for extras, and then I'd ask the production folks, I want to be in production. Who should I talk to?
Very smart. Yes.
I had a question for David. So you mentioned how you work with a lot of like music like artists, and I was just wondering, how do you before you start working with the artists, like when you're making music videos, like fan content, do you have any advice for getting like the rights for that to publish it online and get noticed?
It's a great question. We actually work a lot with the production companies and the agency and the record label. So for us we're simply providing the service. So they're the ones that are going to go through all the legality and answer any of those questions. But when we upload like our VFX breakdowns, we always just say we're part of the content crew that created it. So I think that was a great question. But for the most part, we work directly with the label, so we don't never really have to deal with any of those issues per se. So good question. Thank you.
We have a short amount of time left, sadly. So I want to ask a very important question, perhaps a question that others might like to hear more on. What advice would each of you give to someone looking to get cast in a local production or find crew work locally here in San Antonio? I know we touched on that, but if you can elaborate, it's important. People, I think, really want to connect. So keep coming to events like this for sure.
Yeah. Oh, actually, when I first started, I was, like I said, everybody kind of does their own stuff. So you're kind of the DP, you're the one filming it, you're the one editing it, and then you're the one kind of coming out with it. You can always go that route, but you can only do that for so long where you kind of burn out. So then, yeah, I would say get on those crews. And I mean, I started off as a PA, and then I would talk to a lot of different departments. I would work with the grip crew first, and then it was where I started going with the camera crew, and then even like makeup. When I was in LA for school, because UT has a program where you can go to LA and you're part of the production companies there. I got in touch with, I was working with the prop master, and I never even thought about doing prop work, but I wanted to learn everything, right? There is to learn, and so that's when you go have these conversations. I got to do a piece with the prop master that actually came out in the film, and so I was like, that was my little piece that I got to work on. So really just talking to everybody in the crew, get to know everybody, even the cast. I mean, the cast might have another opportunity to work on something else, and then they're like, oh, grab that PA because she was awesome. Or, you know, just make sure you're doing good work while you're on there, be positive, and just say hi to everyone, really. Make sure everybody kind of knows you at the end of that crew call, that crew.
Yeah, you never know where your next job might come from or who you've interacted with. So it's a good piece of advice. Daniel?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that, and I think everybody already said it tonight, is, again, like, this isn't Hollywood here, right? And so San Antonio is a very tight-knit community already. So the filmmakers that are here have a lot to say, right? So when you find that you're away from the system, the biggest advice that we always give is find your community, right? And by finding your community, we say, like, oh, find your tribe. And so you can be the most amazing script writer, screenplay writer. You can be an amazing 3D sculptor. You can be an amazing producer. But if no one knows you, you're going to be walking the road of isolation. And filmmaking itself is a very collaborative form, right? So the biggest thing we would say is, like, find your community. You need to go out. You need to go make friends, and you need a network. We have Production Club, right? Snavely's here tonight, and you can talk with him. It's a great group, and they're meeting once a month. And then Film San Antonio does quarterly get together and have coffee and have some conversations. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and the great thing is now that you have this amazing thing called the internet, right? And you can go online and you can get connected and you can see, well, I can put my headshot out there. You got to find the resources. So tonight they're giving out free headshots, right? How many of you are going to use that, utilize it, put it on your portfolio, put it out there, and start marketing yourself? So as you do, I'll leave you with a quick story. Quick music video, we're out there, the producer's like, hey, you need to talk to this PA. This gentleman's probably in his late 30s. And he's out there picking up trash, and I'm just saying hello. And again, always be nice to everybody on set because you'll never know where they end up. I keep in touch with the relationships. So relationships are gold in this industry. So I go back to LA, I have coffee, and I'm meet up with this gentleman. He is now working on the show Kenobi, and he turns on the volume. So to see that within a 9-month period, he was picking up trash, now he was turning on the LED volume, and he's like, Spielberg came in on Saturday. I turned on the stage for him. I was like, bro, this is amazing. So there's this idea of build your network, build your team. And when you start finding the people that are out there doing, the thing is, like, filmmakers are very introverted people, right? We like to stay and be quiet, keep to ourselves. But the reality is, the moment you get out and meet the other filmmakers, you will find out that they are almost exactly like you. They like a lot of the same movies. They do the same things. They have the same quirks. And so for us, it's really been the more people you're exposed to, the bigger the community, the bigger the family. So I would say, to the question that was asked, find your tribe, find your community.
I have been told that we needed to wrap up this conversation at 8:10, and it is 8:10. We are delivering on time and on budget. And I can't think of a better note to kind of wrap things up on. So TPR, tell me if that's true, because if it's not, we'll keep talking. One more question. Okay, fantastic. Yay.
So I hate to be the guy to bring this up, but what has AI done to each of your workflows?
Whoa, we're going into the future now.
Oh my goodness.
But actually the present.
So what it's done for our workflow is that we're just talking a lot about it. We're setting standards within our company and just watching every headline, reading every article. And we are still not 100% sure how we're going to use it, how our clients will want us to use it. But we do know that there needs to be transparency, and there needs to be, just a common ground when it comes to AI. And so more to come. Great question.
A very great question. I'll just hop in with my limited kind of perspective on this. Being in the city space, we're not seeing it as much. However, if you intern for someone and they ask you to do coverage of a script, do not use AI to generate your coverage, or we will find out and we will know, and it will be a bad look for you. You might think you're smart, but no. Coverage is something that is, I think, best done by humans at this point. So, Daniel, fix it in post. Fix it with AI.
Yeah, well, the thing I was going to say about AI real quick is sitting on a few boards, and educators are out there asking, what do we do with AI? What are we doing with it? And our whole existence today has been because we've always leaned into the technology. And I think there is a fear out there. But at the end of the day, the more you know, the better you are prepared for it. All right. So whether you're script writing or using it to generate backgrounds or matte paintings or cleanup, we've used it. We used it on a Santana project where we used it for Roto. Is it there yet? No. But will it be there? Yes. Give it time. We went to an Adobe mixer recently, and they showcased what you could do. Say like, hey, I want to create a logo. I want to create this. And so at the end of the day, don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Learn as much as you can with it. Will it replace some jobs? Maybe. But I rather lean in on it than live a life of fear. And so there's always that idea of taking the risk. And the more you know, the better you're prepared. And it saves some things, but you will always need. The same question happened in the 90s. CGI is going to take over. There's going to be no need for actors anymore. That was the big thing. And here we are 30 years later. There will always be something to this medium. So AI, lean into it, continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to expand, and we'll see where we are in a few years.